The sun was blazing as Obi pulled up to the church in his sleek, white Tesla, the one nobody in his family knew he owned. The crowd turned, whispering in disbelief. Cameras clicked, but the people who should have been there, his mother, his brothers, his own blood, were nowhere to be seen. He stared at the empty front row reserved for family of the groom. His chest tightened. Not even a call. Not even a message. As he handed the car keys to the valet, he muttered to himself, "They said I'd never amount to anything. Let's see if they still think that when they see what success looks like." Hours later, as photos from his wedding went viral online, his phone began to ring. One by one, the same people who'd ignored his invitations suddenly remembered they had a son. Obi walked up to his mother's house, holding the neatly folded wedding invitation in his hand. He felt a flutter of hope, imagining a smile, a hug, maybe even some excitement. But the moment he handed it to her, her eyes narrowed, and she laughed sharply. "You think we'll attend a roadside wedding for a delivery driver?" she sneered. Obi's heart sank, but he kept his face calm. He turned to his brothers, Dyron and Feo, and the response was worse. They smirked, whispering to each other, mocking him for planning a wedding they didn't think he deserved. Aunt Kemi, standing nearby, shook her head and added, "And that girl? You think she's wife material? She's just a distraction." Nola, Obi's fiancée, stood quietly by his side, her fingers trembling, holding back tears as each cruel word hit. Obi's chest tightened, but he didn't argue. He felt a mix of hurt and anger, and a quiet fire lit inside him. He handed the invitations to them and walked away, his steps slow but steady. He didn't cry, he didn't yell, he didn't beg. Instead, he made a silent promise to himself. One day, he would show them what real success looked like. He would prove that their laughter, their mocking, and their disbelief would not define him. That day, their words planted a determination in him so strong that no ridicule, no rejection, and no lack of support could shake it. As he left the house, Obi glanced at Nola and gave her a small, reassuring smile. She squeezed his hand, and together they walked forward, unaware that this very moment would be the spark that led to a life that would make everyone who doubted him stop and stare. That day, the invitation they threw away became the seed of a success story that they would one day witness. But only when Obi was ready to reveal it on his terms. Months before the wedding, Obi's days were long and exhausting. From dawn, he rode his motorcycle through busy streets, delivering groceries to people all over the city. Sweat poured down his face, but he never complained. After finishing deliveries, he would rush home, eat a quick meal, and sit in front of his laptop. Nights became his secret world. He coded endlessly, developing an app that could change the way people connected with small businesses. He worked quietly, never telling anyone because he knew his family wouldn't understand. They only saw the money he sent home each month and complained it was never enough. "You always give a little, but it's never enough," his mother would say, and his brothers would nod in agreement. Their words stung, but Obi kept going. He didn't work for their approval. He worked for a dream he believed in. At the same time, Nola's family became his quiet supporters. They encouraged him, sent messages of hope, and reminded him that his effort would one day pay off. Nola, standing beside him, never doubted him. She saw the late nights, the fatigue, and the sacrifices, and she believed in him more than anyone else. Her quiet faith gave him strength, even when his own blood turned away. Obi didn't share his victories or struggles with his family, because he knew their respect was never for him. It was only for what he could give. Then one evening, after months of sleepless nights and endless coding, Obi's app caught the attention of an American startup. They offered a deal that would change his life forever. He could have called his mother, his brothers, or even Nola, but he didn't. He kept it a secret, letting the news settle quietly in his heart. He wanted the moment to be perfect. He wanted to show everyone, especially those who mocked him, that hard work, patience, and belief in oneself could turn impossible dreams into reality. He imagined the wedding day, the look on his family's faces, the shock and surprise. It was his plan, his moment of truth, and he held it close, savoring it silently. Every late night, every tired morning, every ignored complaint from his family led to this one moment when success would speak louder than their doubt. Obi's silent struggle had a purpose, and when the day came, it would be a story they could never forget. The morning of the wedding was bright, and the church looked stunning. White flowers lined the aisles, soft music filled the air, and the sunlight streamed through the stained glass windows, making everything glow. Guests arrived, whispering to each other, clearly impressed by the elegance and thought put into every detail. Obi's heart beat faster, thinking this was the happiest day of his life, the day he would marry Nola, the woman who had stood by him through everything. But when the ceremony began, his excitement turned to a heavy ache. He glanced at the front row, where the seats read family of the groom. Each chair was empty. His mother, Aunt Kemi, Dyron, and Feo were nowhere to be seen. His chest tightened, and for a moment, the room seemed colder, as if the beauty around him didn't matter anymore. He swallowed hard, trying not to let the disappointment show. The people he thought would celebrate this moment with him had chosen to stay away, leaving him to feel their absence like a sharp pain in his heart. Nola squeezed his hand gently and whispered, "You don't need them to make this day special." Her voice was soft but strong, filled with love and understanding. Obi looked at her and forced a smile, but inside, a hollow feeling spread through him. He had imagined family cheering, smiling, maybe even crying with joy, but all he saw were empty seats and the quiet whispers of other guests. The realization hit him hard. Blood isn't always family. Some people may share your name, your history, but when it matters the most, they may not be there. As the ceremony continued, Obi tried to focus on Nola, on the vows they were about to say, but his mind kept drifting to those empty seats. The absence of his mother and brothers was louder than any music in the church. Every smile from a guest, every clap, and every tear from others reminded him of what he didn't have. Yet, looking at Nola, he felt a flicker of warmth. She believed in him, she loved him, and she chose to be there for him. That thought gave him strength, even though the hollow feeling lingered. In that moment, Obi understood something he had never truly realized before. Family isn't defined by blood alone. It's defined by those who stand by you when it matters, who celebrate your victories, and who hold your hand when life gets hard. The empty seats hurt, yes, but they also made him see the truth. He wasn't alone, and the people who really mattered were right beside him. After the ceremony, Obi led Nola outside, smiling but keeping a calm face. Guests followed, curious about what he had planned. As they reached the driveway, a sleek, white Tesla Model X gleamed under the sun, its doors reflecting the crowd's astonished faces. The murmurs grew louder as people began to recognize the car. Obi reached into his pocket and pulled out the keys, holding them out to Nola. Her eyes widened, tears forming as she looked from the car to him, speechless. "For every tear you shed when they mocked me," he said softly, his voice steady but filled with emotion. The guests gasped, whispering to each other, some holding out their phones to capture the moment. Nola's hand shook as she took the keys, a mixture of joy and disbelief on her face. She looked at Obi, her eyes shining, and hugged him tightly. Everyone around them could feel the weight of the moment. This wasn't just a gift, it was a statement. A statement that despite all the pain, all the rejection, and all the humiliation, Obi had risen. He had turned their cruel words into motivation, and had created a life they could never ignore. Within minutes, guests started recording videos and taking pictures. Social media exploded as photos of Nola standing beside the Tesla, smiling through tears, were shared online. Comments poured in, many admiring Obi's gesture, others applauding his journey. Within hours, the hashtag #LoyaltyOverBlood was trending. People connected with the story instantly, the pain of being ignored, the triumph of love and perseverance, and the surprise that left everyone in awe. Obi stood back for a moment, watching Nola's excitement and the crowd's reaction. He felt a quiet satisfaction, a deep sense of accomplishment. This was the moment he had dreamed of, not for fame, not for revenge, but to honor the woman who had always believed in him. The Tesla wasn't just a gift. It was proof that love, patience, and determination could turn every insult and every hurtful word into a victory. As the videos continued to circulate online, Obi realized that this one act would reach far beyond the church, inspiring others who had been doubted, ignored, or mocked. In giving Nola the keys to the Tesla, he had unlocked a new chapter in their lives, one filled with hope, respect, and admiration from the world. The surprise had worked exactly as he hoped. Not only did it celebrate their love, but it also told a powerful story. True loyalty and support are worth more than blood, and success is sweetest when shared with the ones who truly stand by you. That evening after the ceremony, Obi and Nola were taking photos, capturing smiles and laughter, when Obi's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and froze. It was his mother, the same woman who had ignored his calls, brushed off his messages, and mocked him when he handed her the wedding invitation months ago. His heart tightened, a mix of anger and disbelief washing over him. He answered slowly, trying to keep his voice steady. "Obi, why didn't you tell us you were doing so well? We would have come." Her voice trembled with fake emotion, but Obi could hear the urgency beneath it, as if success had finally reminded her he existed. He stayed silent, letting her words hang in the air. She continued, calling him my son, now, a title she had ignored for years when he was struggling. It felt hollow, empty, and insulting all at once. He remembered the nights he worked 2 jobs, coding tirelessly, sending money home, only to be told it was never enough. Almost immediately, his brothers began texting, each claiming they had been too sick to attend the wedding, their messages dripping with excuses. Dyron sent a long note apologizing for missing such an important day, while Feo's message sounded like rehearsed remorse. Obi read each message slowly, his chest tightening. Every word reminded him of their absence, their mockery, and their selfishness. He looked at Nola, who had been by his side through every struggle, and her calm, understanding gaze gave him strength. Obi didn't reply to any of them. He didn't need to. He held the phone loosely in his hand and whispered under his breath, "They only love what they can use." Those words carried the weight of years of pain, rejection, and disappointment. His family's sudden concern was not about him or his happiness. It was about what he had achieved and what they could gain from it. As he put the phone down, Obi felt a strange mix of relief and clarity. He realized that their love had never been unconditional. The calls, the texts, and the fake apologies could not erase the years they had ignored him, mocked him, or dismissed him. He turned back to Nola, feeling gratitude instead of anger, knowing she had stood by him when no one else did. That night, the hypocritical call only confirmed what he already knew. True family is not about blood or excuses. It is about presence, support, and loyalty when it truly matters. A few days after the wedding, Obi was settling into his new home with Nola, when there was a knock at the door. Opening it, he was surprised to see his mother, Aunt Kemi, and his brothers standing there, smiling and carrying wrapped gifts. They hadn't called or asked permission to come, but now they acted as if they were always welcome. His mother immediately praised Nola, calling her a beautiful daughter-in-law, while his brothers nodded and complimented the house. They insisted on a family reunion, saying it had been too long since everyone gathered. Nola looked at Obi nervously, unsure if she should let them in, but he stepped aside, letting them enter, telling her, "Let's hear them out." The house soon filled with chatter and laughter, but Obi felt a knot in his stomach. During dinner, the conversation slowly shifted. His mother, with a casual smile, asked about the Tesla. "It's beautiful," she said. "How much did it cost, Obi?" Obi answered calmly, trying not to show his irritation. Then, without missing a beat, she leaned in and said, "You know your brother needs a car too, Obi. You should help him, like family." The words hit him like a cold wave. Obi realized then that nothing had changed. Their smiles, their gifts, their praise for Nola, and their insistence on family time were not about love or reconciliation. It was about opportunity. They were here because he had money, success, and something they could try to take advantage of. The same people who mocked him, ignored him, and disrespected him for years were now pretending to be supportive, because it suited them. He watched Nola as she quietly excused herself to the kitchen, sensing her discomfort. Obi's mind was sharp and clear. He would not fall for their act. The warmth they pretended to show couldn't hide their selfish intentions. They were testing him, looking for a way to use his success to benefit themselves. And Obi knew that if he gave in, they would never respect him. They would only ever see him as a wallet. Dinner continued, filled with polite conversation, but Obi stayed silent, observing their behavior, noticing the subtle ways they hinted at money, favors, and opportunities for themselves. Every compliment was calculated, every smile forced. By the end of the evening, Obi felt a mix of pity and resolve. He had worked hard, built his life, and found love and loyalty in Nola. They hadn't changed. They were the same as before, only now they saw a chance to exploit him. That realization made him stronger. He understood he had to protect his life, his success, and the woman who truly cared for him. And in that moment, Obi decided that he would not let anyone, even family, take advantage of the life he had built. When Obi calmly told his mother and brothers that he wouldn't give them money, the atmosphere changed instantly. His mother's cheerful smile disappeared, replaced by anger. She turned to Nola, her voice sharp and accusing. "It's because of you she won't help us. You've turned him against his own family." Nola stayed silent, her eyes steady on Obi, showing him she trusted his judgment. Obi's brothers, Dyron and Feo, exchanged looks, frustration written all over their faces. Words were thrown across the room, voices rising, tension building with each sentence. The polite facade they had worn earlier crumbled, revealing the selfishness that had always been there. "You forgot who raised you," his brother shouted, grabbing his coat and storming toward the door. Dyron followed, muttering insults under his breath. His mother lingered. A moment, her face twisted with anger and disappointment, then left as well. Obi watched the door close behind them, feeling a mixture of relief and sorrow. He had expected selfishness, but the speed with which it had turned into anger shocked him. It hurt deeply to see the people who were supposed to care about him behave like strangers, only concerned with what they could get. The next week brought an even bigger shock. Obi noticed unusual activity in his app, files missing, data corrupted, features altered. Panic rose in his chest as he traced the leak, using every tool he had to find the source. The results made him feel sick. The IP address that had accessed his source code was from a location close to his family's home. His heart sank. His own brother, the same person who had laughed at him and ignored him, had sold his hard work to make a few $1,000s. Betrayal cut deeper than any insult he had ever received. Obi sat in silence, staring at his laptop, trying to process the realization. Years of struggle, sleepless nights, and sacrifices had been violated by someone he should have trusted. The betrayal was not just about money, it was about trust, respect, and loyalty, all of which his family had ignored whenever it suited them. He felt the sting of disappointment, but also the fire of determination. He knew he couldn't let their selfishness break him. Looking at Nola, who stood quietly beside him, Obi felt a renewed sense of focus. This betrayal, painful as it was, only reminded him why he had worked so hard and why he needed to protect his life and his dreams. His family had shown their true colors, greedy, opportunistic, and untrustworthy, and Obi understood one simple truth: success didn't change people, it revealed them. And now, he would be even more careful about who he let into his life. Obi sat in his living room, thinking about what had happened. His family had betrayed him, tried to take advantage of his success, and even sold his work. Behind his back, anger bubbled inside him, but he took a deep breath and decided not to react in the way they expected. Instead of shouting, confronting, or seeking revenge in private, he chose a smarter path, one that would give him control and make his voice heard. He prepared to share his story on a popular podcast, speaking honestly about everything he had endured. He talked about the long nights delivering groceries, the coding that kept him awake, the moments of doubt, and the people who had mocked him when he had nothing. He didn't speak to shame his family, but to show others the truth about toxic relationships, about how some people only appear when there is success to be shared, and about the importance of self-worth and believing in yourself. His words were raw, simple, and powerful. He let listeners feel his hurt, his struggle, and his triumph, and he spoke with a quiet strength that could not be ignored. Within hours, the episode began to spread. Clips of his story circulated on social media, gaining thousands of likes and shares. People resonated with his honesty, his courage, and the way he had handled betrayal. Comments poured in from listeners who had experienced the same pain, many thanking him for giving them the courage to stand up for themselves. The hashtag success without permission started trending as people shared their own stories alongside his, celebrating resilience and determination. Brands and tech companies began to notice. Offers for sponsorships, partnerships, and collaborations flooded in. People wanted to work with him, not because of his wealth, but because of the authenticity and strength he had shown in sharing his story. He became a symbol of perseverance, a living example that success is sweetest when you remain true to yourself and rise above betrayal. Meanwhile, the family who had once ignored him watched from a distance, their excitement replaced by silence. They saw the man they had underestimated become a public figure, admired and respected by thousands, and they could do nothing but watch. Obi had turned what could have been a moment of hurt into a story of empowerment, proving that real victory comes not from taking revenge, but from rising above, speaking the truth, and inspiring the world. The world was listening, and Obi finally had the attention he had deserved all along. A month later, there was a knock at the door. Obi opened it and froze. His mother stood there, tears streaming down her face, trembling as she tried to speak. "Obi, we made mistakes," she said, her voice shaking, full of regret. Behind her, Dairon and Feo stood silently, heads down, avoiding his gaze. The sight hit him in a way he hadn't expected. For years they had ignored him, mocked him, and even betrayed him. And now they came asking for forgiveness as if that erased everything. Obi looked past them for a moment at Nola, who was quietly standing beside him. Her presence gave him courage. She had never left his side, never questioned his choices, and had celebrated him even when his own blood did not. He took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. He didn't yell, he didn't cry. He simply looked at his mother and his brothers, seeing them clearly for the first time since the wedding. Softly he spoke, his voice calm but full of meaning. "You didn't ignore my wedding," he said, letting each word sink in. "You ignored me." There was no anger in his tone, only truth. He could see the surprise in their eyes, the understanding dawning too late. Their apologies, their tears, their regret could not change the years they had hurt him, or the ways they had tried to use him. Obi forgave them in his heart. He let go of the anger, the bitterness, and the pain that had weighed him down for so long. But forgiveness didn't mean reopening the doors to hurt and exploitation. He did not let them into his home. The walls that protected his life, his success, and the woman who had truly stood by him stay firm. Some doors, once closed, were meant to remain closed for peace, for dignity, and for the life he had built with Nola. His mother cried harder, his brothers shifted uncomfortably, but Obi remained steady. He had finally reached a place where their actions no longer controlled his emotions. He had power over his life, his happiness, and his boundaries. Nola squeezed his hand gently, and together they watched the family leave, understanding that closure did not always mean reconciliation. Obi had chosen peace over pain, truth over pretense, and loyalty over blood. That doorstep moment marked the end of one chapter, and the beginning of a life where respect, love, and support were earned, not demanded. For Obi, it was a victory beyond any car, any app, or any viral story. It was a victory over neglect, betrayal, and the people who never truly valued him. Months later, Obi stood on the stage of a packed auditorium, the bright lights shining down on him as cameras recorded every word. The audience was quiet, waiting, curious about what he had to say. He took a deep breath, feeling the weight of his journey, the struggles, the betrayals, the late nights, and the victories. Then he began to speak, his voice calm but full of emotion. "Love me when I'm walking, not when I'm driving. Because if your loyalty depends on my success, then it was never love." The words resonated through the room, hitting hearts and minds. People nodded, some whispered to each other, and soon the silence turned into applause. By the time he finished, the audience was on their feet, giving him a standing ovation, cheering for his courage, honesty, and the strength it took to rise above pain and neglect. After the talk, Obi walked off the stage with Nola by his side. They got into his Tesla, the same car that had become a symbol of his triumph, and he started the engine. As they drove away, he glanced at Nola, smiling with gratitude and peace. "I didn't lose a family," he said softly.